Hey there, my name's Sean, and welcome to the video course for Build School. So what I'm going to do here, I've been working with a group of people. There's a cohort of 5 people that I've helped for the month of November. This is our group, and I've been leading them, working with them to help them build their MVPs using Claude code and everything that's involved with that. This is the syllabus that we've been going by. So this is all the stuff that we've done day to day in terms of leading them through what they need to know, the main concepts, and how to get proficient with this stuff. And my thesis here is that like these tools are so incredibly powerful, and yet they're just out of reach for most people. Claude Code, I think there's nothing that beats this right now. This is kind of the leading horse in the race in terms of like IDEs and capable Gen AI tools. And yet it's still like the upfront technical hurdle just to get over the hump. It still requires that you kind of know some software concepts, that you're likely going to already be a developer and you know how to run some Linux commands and basic knowledge of GitHub and Git. And so there's these things that just preclude most people from using this stuff. And I think that they're finally, the models have advanced finally to the point where they're so good that if you just have some minimal knowledge of these concepts, then anyone can be basically like a product manager and use these tools as their team. And like Claude Code essentially becomes your CTO, your senior developer, your UX designer, like all these roles, your DevOps. So it performs all these roles for you, but you still have to like get over that initial technical hump. And so that's my goal of this. What I've done is I've taken this syllabus, everything that we've done so far in November. And I know now, having built a bunch of apps, like what's involved. And I've condensed this into this, what is going to be a self-led course. So this was the idea that we'd work together and the curriculum would kind of firm up through this process. And here it is. This is the distilled curriculum of what you need to know. And I'm basically just going to go start to finish, build an app from scratch. I'm going to show you all the way from the very beginning, like literally zero, just an idea. And we're going to build that start to finish together. And if you follow along that whole process, hopefully it's only like maybe 3 hours max. But if you follow along that process, you will have learned everything here, like all the key concepts. And what's neat about this is you just need like loose awareness of stuff, and you need to know what to ask for. But when you've never done any of this stuff, you don't even know what you don't know. So it's kind of like paralyzing in that you just don't know how to ask for what you don't know. So so my goal here is to expose you to all the key concepts, to get you comfortable with using this stuff. Some of the basics, just the minimal amount that you need to know about Git, about Linux, about software concepts, development. And then I think this will start to flow. So we are going to be using Claude Code. I think this is the tool. I mean, this is how fast the industry moves. This just literally came out yesterday. So this is Google's answer to Claude Code. I haven't used it yet. It looks pretty impressive. But I mean, the good news is what I'm going to teach you is agnostic of the tool. Like the mindset and the process and the approach doesn't change. These tools are going to come and go, and they're coming at an incredible pace. The whole industry is just changing. It seems like every week there's some new big announcement. But we needn't worry about that. Like, in other words, the process that I'm going to teach you, you could use Claude, or you could use Cursor, or you could use this new anti-gravity thing. It's more important that you get comfortable with like what is the trajectory, what are the main things that need to happen, and what's my mindset in working with the LLM. Because this is really the unlock. Once you learn how to work with the LLM, you kind of don't need to know a lot of the underlying plumbing. Like the bricklaying is commoditized at this point. Architecture will always be valuable, but like the bricklaying is, the LLM handles it all for you. But you need to know how to ask for where you want the bricks, right? So if you want to know more about me, this is me as a about page on my blog. I've been in tech for 30 years, started in 95. My goal really is always to unlock people. At this point, I'm retired and I do this for fun, but I just think these tools are so incredibly powerful. This is like the greatest moment in terms of if you know this stuff and you have whatever your domain expertise, you can, with knowledge of these tools and some niche knowledge about like a problem domain, you can literally make a business overnight. And this is also something that I think most people don't realize, is that a tool like Claude Code, once you wire it up, we'll learn about this concept of MCP, Model Context Protocol. You don't really need to know what that means. It's just a connector. It's essentially like what Zapier or any of these like tools that allow you to connect services. But once you have your Claude Code wired up to other systems so it can act on your behalf, now it's not just a tool for writing software. This thing can run social media accounts. It can respond to emails. It can, do stuff in Slack or in Trello or whatever tools you use. It can start to like be your assistant and do stuff on your behalf. So, I mean, it's just incredibly powerful. So we'll get there. But I think with all that said, that's the goal of the course. Let's dig in here. So we're going to use something to start here. And I guess actually, let me just give you a super quick overview. So the idea here, our first phase is going to be working with Confabulator. This is a tool that I built for our community. It's what I use now to start all my projects, and it does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of helping you organize your thoughts, get the foundational documents, convert those into, you integrate it with your GitHub account, and then it will actually go out and move those files there and generate all the initial issues that you use. So this is a super neat way to jumpstart any project. It'll also break that if you've ever had like what I call blank canvas syndrome, you just, when you're staring at a blank canvas, you don't know where to start. This is a neat way that you'll see it just leads you through kind of pedagogically interview style and gets you to that outcome. So we're going to use this to start. We're then going to set up the environment. I'm working on a Mac. If you're not working on a Mac, there's something called WSL that you can use if you're a Windows user. But if you're Mac or Linux, you're in good shape because that's what the commands are that I'm going to show. And again, I'm just going to show you the very basics. This is like the most technical thing that we're going to do. And unfortunately, you have to do it first. And so this is why a lot of people just get blocked out and they never get access to what I'm going to show you. Once we get our environment set up, we're then going to make some screen mockups. And we have 3 ways to do that. And so we're going to kind of triangulate what the user interface needs to look like, and we're going to use the LLMs to help us get there. So this is a nifty kind of hack that I've learned just through doing it, that you needn't be a designer. Like, I'm terrible at design, but the LLMs are actually fairly decent, and if you can direct them, they will independently, you can kind of use 3 different data points to get to where you want to go. We're then going to do an architectural review on the files that we get from Confabulator, because Confabulator is using OpenAI. And personally, I think Claude is just way better. So we're going to actually beat up on OpenAI's plan. And then we're going to build out those screens. We're going to use dummy data. So each one of these steps is designed to de-risk it as much as possible. So by starting with the mockups and not using actual, like going right into code and developing the thing, we can get kind of a meeting of the minds with what it's intending to build. And then once we're happy with that, we're still not going to dive in and build the backend. We're just going to build out the screens and then link them all together. And then with that, we're going to deploy it. And deploying it means that it now lives out there on a publicly accessible link, and we can give that to our friends. We can get some feedback on it, click around, and it's out there for the world. So that will solve deployment. Once that is all working and we're happy with it, then we're just going to strip out that dummy data and put a real database behind it. This is what you want. Like, eventually every app has a database behind it if it's storing any kind of data or it's users interacting with it. So this is just where data lives, basically. We're then going to learn the difference between dev and production. And then I'm going to show you how to build out features and like what are the patterns and the technique here and how do you work with it. I think it was Andrew Karpathy, some famous CTO guy, just recently said like English is the new programming language, and you're going to see why. This is like, you don't need to know the syntax or any of these advanced languages. You can just literally give it your requirements in English, but there's a way you have to do it to get it to do what you want. So this is like kind of the crux of everything that we're going to learn here is this part about how you build out features using the LLM. If we get time, like if there's time for it, we'll use sub-agents and this thing called Git work trees. This is how you parallelize dev. So you can actually speed it up and have individual agents simultaneously working on stuff. For the purposes of an MVP, we may not do this, but we'll see if we get there. And then this is just a bunch of other kind of catch-all random stuff that I think is useful to know around debugging and context, and like down the road if you want to set up like a formal continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline. So anyways, this is a lot of stuff. Don't be overwhelmed by it, because each piece of it is going to make sense as we get to it. And really, I just, again, want you to have the concepts to get comfortable and just take the first step of doing this. And that first step right now is Confabulator. So let's, with that, all that said, let's get there. Let's do it. And we're going to log in. And now that I'm logged in, since I already have a project, it skips the landing page and it goes here. So we're just gonna start a new one. And I'm gonna do the thing that I'm gonna build, I'm gonna call it, this is an app that comes up a lot when we do these live cooking demos in our events. So I'm gonna call it Perfect Match. Actually, I'm gonna call it Dog Tinder because it's just easier to say, but it's this idea of basically like a swipe interface to help orphan dogs. So let's just go through this. I'm using a tool, by the way, for dictation. It's called Talktastic. Pull it up here. Yeah, this is the tool. So a big fan of this for dictation. It just speeds things up for demo purposes. I can just basically talk, and it not only captures what I say, but you can have it, or what I like to do is have it rewrite it and simplify it. So as you see me talking, this is the tool that I'm using. So, okay, what are we building? Well, let's just tell it. I want to build an application that is essentially a Tinder for orphan dogs. And so this is the ability to basically find and adopt a dog via swiping. Okay, the problem that we're solving is too many dogs are euthanized each year because they're stuck in shelters and not enough people are adopting them. And if we make it easy enough and frictionless enough, I think more people would adopt dogs. But we need to expand the market for people who will adopt dogs. I heard in a talk that was talking about this problem and how many dogs are needlessly put to death each year. And I thought that this would be an interesting way to combat that issue. So we're just answering these questions. We're going through this interview, and you can see how even if you don't know your idea for an app, you can at least answer these questions and it will start to elicit the concepts from you. Ideal customer. So our ideal customer is someone who has discretionary income, ability to adopt an animal, likely familiar with social media and apps. And and the primary thing is that they're capable of adopting an animal. The pain that they're experiencing, well, they're not really experiencing the pain, and that is exactly the purpose of our app. It's to gently indoctrinate them into this issue. Like, so the idea is that they download the app and they just do it to swipe and see a bunch of cute dogs. But in the process of doing that, then we will gently make them aware of the issue of too many dogs being euthanized, and that from that they will then experience some pain, and ideally we'll make it easy enough where they can meet the animal and adopt it. So they're not using anything now. And again, that's the point. We're attempting to reach a new market. So these are folks who have not, maybe they've considered adopting a dog, but they never did. And so we're really trying to reach out and find new people. And it's really going to be, we're going to hit a lot of people who obviously aren't candidates and they're just there to swipe. But the idea is that we some percentage of the people who use our app are going to get invested in particular dogs, and they're going to want to meet them. So if we make it easy enough for that to happen, that potentially they could become a parent of the dog. Exceeded. There we go. Okay. Customers will use our product because it's super fun and you get to see a lot of cute dog pictures, and but it will also have some educational stuff peppered in there that makes them aware of the issue. And yeah, it'll just be fun and super frictionless and easy to use. Core features needs to include a swipe-like interface, very similar to Tinder, for the people to basically build a list of liked dogs, and then they need to be able to easily make an appointment to visit. So it should help them book an appointment for the next available time slot to see that animal. And they should also be able to communicate with the shelter about the animal, and they should be able to see a list of their likes. And then from the perspective of the shelter, there needs to be an easy way to add profiles very quickly. So it should be allow them to snap photos and make a quick little description that has all the data, maybe even take a picture of that dog's dossier and have that fill out their profile. And then they need to be able to communicate with the people who are inquiring about the dog, and they need to be able to list their availability for hours in which someone can come into the shelter to meet the animal. Okay, we're going to say it's web and mobile. And success in a year looks like, let's say, 10 shelters using this, and maybe 100 appointments booked, and 1,000 visitors to the website, and maybe 200 downloads of the application. Success metrics would be average swipes per user, number of appointments booked, number of dogs added to the system, the number of shelters signed up, average number of dog profiles created, and ultimately number of dogs placed that wouldn't have otherwise. Not for now, but maybe down the road if we get enough traction and if it's working and profitable, then we'll consider taking money. Okay, so what it's doing right now is it's taking everything that we just did and it's going to come up with a final set of clarifying questions. These are basically, it helps it to make a better set of documents, filling in the gaps of anything that we missed or that it wants to know more about. Okay, so you mentioned a swipe-like interface, blah, blah, blah. What happens once the user swipes right? Can you walk me through what they see and do next? Yeah, so when a user swipes right, it's similar to Tinder in that it's building a like list. Obviously, we don't need the reciprocal swipe from the shelter. It's just presumed that it's always like a swipe right. It's always a match. So anytime that they're swiping, it's just literally adding that to a like list. And they need to be able to then go back to any particular dog on their like list and initiate, say, a request to book an appointment. And then that should show them availability for visiting the shelter. And they should, right from that screen, be able to then choose a time and request a visit. And they should also be able to initiate contact. So if they want to ask a question about the dog, they can do that by messaging the shelter. Okay, how do they, so if they first come across our app, Likely word of mouth, hearing it from a friend. Yeah, we'll definitely want to have a viral component to this. I would imagine it's one of these things where you should be able to share maybe your, like, any cute dog that you find, make it very easy for that person to share that profile, maybe even share their list of liked dogs if we can gamify that somehow. So we definitely want to work up, viral aspects to this. I don't see us running advertising early on, but I'd say initially it's going to be a lot of just like social media sharing and that type. So I see this being done strictly via the app. So it's kind of a double blind where the user initiates contact with the shelter. Likely they want to ask a question, or they go through the booking process to book a slot to visit. And then the shelter will get notified. Whoever is their primary contact will probably get an email notification. And so there needs to be like a messaging system that notifies both users, the consumers, as well as the shelter admins anytime there's a message. And in terms of the information exchanged, the app should just basically facilitate the booking of the appointment time and then make it very easy for the shelter to answer questions about that animal. Maybe they want to know something about its pedigree or background or what it, habits or something. So the shelter just needs to be able to quickly respond and not create a lot of friction for them. Yeah. Okay, so I think we've answered most of these adequately. So let's hit generate documents. And what it's going to do in the background, it's now, this is where all the magic is happening. So it's creating what's called a PR FAQ. This is an Amazon thing. It's a press release that you run. It's an aspirational press release that you write when you're launching a new product. And so you're writing it from the perspective of maybe 3 months down the road, once you've actually launched this thing. It's like, what do you want to announce at that point? And if we write this aspirationally, it forces us to think through like the value prop, the messaging, the target customer, all the things that need to have happened up to that point in order to be able to celebrate and send this press release. So it's done doing that. The project vision document is really just, it takes everything that we've just said and it constructs it into, mission, vision, values, that kind of longer holistic document that explains our grand, if all of this works out, what this could be if it is an actual venture here. The product requirements document, the PRD. So this is something that captures basically the what. What are we building? What features does it need to have? What are the user flows, the personas that are involved? So it's really, it's capturing, what is it? Like, what is it that you're proposing to build exactly? And this is kind of the keystone of every project. A lot of times they'll have you start with the PRD. So we've done all this interview extra work. I mean, because you could just open up Claude and have it write a PRD and interview you. We've done all this kind of setup work, and you'll see why. Just having these foundational docs allows you to construct other things like the web page and collateral and a slide deck and anything else you need. So business model canvas is a tool that shows you kind of the mechanics of the business, the different like customer segments and value and expenses, revenue, key partners, all that stuff. Implementation plan that it's working on now. So this is taking the PRD and it's converting, it's basically how we're going to implement this. So the PRD is the what it is, and this is where we get down to brass tacks, and it's saying, okay, it's going to have, we need to break it out into these epics with these tasks, and this is going to be our technology stack, and all the details that go into that. This is essentially the spec that you can hand an engineer and say, go build me this. And then lastly, the wireframes. This is really a low fidelity, like ASCII version of what the app is going to actually look like. And this is just one of the 3 data points. If you remember before, I said we're going to triangulate what that user experience looks like. The wireframes that it's going to create here in Markdown is just like the super low fidelity just kind of a sanity check of like, what are the 6 main screens of this application and what's on each of them. Yeah, and so these are the foundational docs. Once they're finished, they will exist here, and we'll have the opportunity to review them. And this is what I recommend. This is like the bare minimum set of stuff that I would recommend you start every project with. Again, I made this tool because it's how I start all my projects, and so I just streamlined it and turned it into a process, and then made this process available to others. And so yeah, so this will probably take another minute or so. And now, before we move on to the next step, so we're basically gonna have like a review phase here where we look at this stuff and we make sure we like it, and we're gonna make any changes that we want. Likely, in the interest of time, we're probably not going to need to do too many changes, but I'll just briefly skim through everything and ensure that it all looks good. Okay, you can see that it completed. It says don't close this window, but I think we're safe to now close this window. All right, I'm just going to reload this. This tells me that it's done, so it's safe to do this. So here's our docs. Dog Tinder, swipe right to find your furry best friend. Right. So this is that press release that it runs. I don't need to read through all this, but it's a very simple press release. If we wanted to, let's say, incorporate some statistics, we could say reshape and say, add some statistics that show overall, unnecessary dog euthanasia. I'm not going to do this right now, but if you can make changes, adapt it. This is the vision doc. Shows you kind of overall who we're targeting, the long-term vision. So really this is like, if you're not building a venture, these docs are maybe less important. Like the business model canvas certainly is not for a hobby. This is really like if you're trying to turn it into a business. But the two that you really need to worry about, we need to make sure that this is accurate. So let's skim this one. Okay. Okay, so it incorporated our KPIs, what success looks like, our personas, core features. So we definitely need the swipe interface, booking system, shelter communication. So see how it distilled, like conceptually, the main chunks of what belongs in this application. And here now it's gotten our user flows, which is great. Okay, MVP. Cool. And then it even has like the anti-pattern, what is not in the scope. Perfect. Okay, and then I'm not even going to make edits to that. It's good enough. Implementation plan. Okay, so this one is what's key because this is what it uses to generate the issues that then become the basis of how the LLM works. So let's see, MVP, attack architecture. So I don't know if I agree with this, but we're going to have an architectural review, and I'm almost assuming, I can guarantee that Claude will push back on some of these recommendations, but it's fine. This is a starting point. And the main thing is like, see how it now takes those conceptual features, we need a swipe interface, but really what's involved in that? Okay. So here's where it has acceptance criteria. This is what it needs to be able to do. So all these stories then get broken into tasks. So here's an epic that's composed of these different tasks. So this is literally everything it needs to know to start building this stuff. So this is perfect. This is perfect. This is good enough to get started. And then lastly, the wireframes. So remember how I said this is like ASCII representations of what this is going to look like. So imagine a logo, some nav items, welcome, start swiping, dog image, the dog's profile. So yeah, so this is pretty much what you'd imagine. the appointment booking, messaging, profile creation for the shelters. So this is great. All right, so I don't think we really need, there's no major, it's not majorly off on anything other than I question the MongoDB, but don't worry about that. So let's just hit approve and continue. And now here is where I've already got it hooked up to my GitHub. If you didn't, there'd be like an interstitial screen here that says OAuth to your GitHub. And you basically just have to say like log into Git. I guess we should talk about what this is. So GitHub is arguably the biggest, it's a Microsoft company now. This is like the biggest source control repository for Git, I would venture to say. But this is basically where you can start new projects, and it tracks in this source control, version control. You'll hear these terms used interchangeably. But this is basically like every project you do, you're going to have a repository here in your GitHub. This is the actual repository for this website. So this is the code behind this website here. But you don't even need to know any of this stuff because it's going to help you set this up automatically. So let's create a new one, and we're going to call it dog Tinder. And I'm going to keep it private, and let's commit, or actually let's make it public. Public and commit. Okay, now in the background, what it's doing, all those files that we just created, those core foundational docs, it's going to go and stick these, it hooks up to our GitHub, it's creating those files. So it's going to create all of those, and it's also going to create the different scaffolding for the various IDEs. So Cursor, Claude, Windsurf. It's going to make these special files that basically instruct each of those IDEs, depending on what you want to use. Like we use Claude Code, but if you want to use Cursor, if you want to use Windsurf or Codex or Gemini, CLI, like any of these tools, you're welcome to use whatever you want, but I'm going to be demonstrating how to do it with Claude Code. So it's just created all those files. It's now going through and setting up GitHub issues. So it's reading that implementation plan, and it's breaking out, remember when it said epics and tasks, it's actually going and creating an issue for each one of those tasks. And I mean, I guess you could do it without doing this, but this is just by far the best way that I've found to work. Because if you've ever worked with something like Trello or Asana or Jira or any of these tools where it's a Kanban board, and otherwise like those swim lanes that you see with like essentially like little Post-it notes that you move down the line, this is just, I think, the best way to work. So it's going in there and it's creating these issues and it's enriching them with exactly like, so for each one of those tasks, you saw it was only like one liner. So for here, it's actually fleshing out like what actually needs to be done for each one of these steps. It's also making it what's called a dependency graph. So it knows like if issue A depends on, or like if number 1 depends on 2 and 2 depends on 3, then you need to do 3 first. And so some of these can be parallelized, but some of them need to be done, there's contingencies. And so that's what it's doing, is it's setting up that dependency graph, it's creating all the issues, and it's enriching them with explicit instructions on how to do everything. So yeah, so as that finishes up, then the last step here is it's going to create that Kanban board. So it actually, the issues are there now, but you also want it displayed in a way that you like to work with it. And so that's what the last step is. Okay, so it's done with the issues. And it's now done with everything. So let's take a look at it. This is the repository. So you can see it's set up. These are those scaffolding files, the stuff for Claude rules, Cursor rules, Windsurf. And then these are all the files that we just showed. So they're all in here. And now we can also look at the project board. This is where all the issues that it just created. And you can see everything's here. And if we look into any of these, it'll show us what we need to do, the acceptance criteria, any considerations, and then dependencies. So it will know, by virtue of this, it knows that this needs to exist first, this needs to exist first. So it wouldn't start this one. It would need to do those other two things first. So this is basically this is step one. We've now laid the foundation, and this is yours. It exists in your GitHub repo. I'm going to make this public, and I'll include this link. So if you want to follow along and have exactly, like, if you go through this process on your own, because these tools are not deterministic, you will get a slightly different variant, and you're welcome to do that, and you can still follow along. But if you want to have the exact stuff that I'm using to work from, then I will make this public, and I'll include the link so you can follow along with that. So this basically concludes this step, this first one, Confabulator, and we'll now move on to the environment.